Hi, this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. Sunday morning chat today is going to be made up of little bits rather than one big long one. It might end up being a long one, but it won't be one continuous long one, if you see what I mean. And the first thing I'd like to discuss is any water better than no water? And you can hear what's going on, you can hear the rain on the roof, and I'm now quite short on RO water, I would say. I've got 3 of my containers left. I need to do my mounts today. That will use up about 1 2/3 of those containers, leaving me with 1 and a bit. That's not enough to water anything out here. So I've got to prioritise now. The mounts need to be done. Yeah, this is their 3rd day, but we've had consecutive dull days. I've had no heat out here. Yeah, so you know, we've been looking at daytime temperatures of 21, 22. That's just residual temperature, and that leaves the humidity high as well, because obviously the extractor and the inlet fan don't come on. I mean, not yesterday, the day before, the circulating fans didn't even come on, and they kick in at 22. So they didn't even come on. That's saving my electricity no end. So, prioritise then. Normally I use my Vander bucket outside with the RO unit, and I have to go out there frequently to use a jug to get the fresh RO water out of the big bucket and put it into my containers. So it's a continuous process. Takes about a day to fill everything up. And obviously nowadays I need quite a bit more RO water because I've got to feed this thing. Yeah? And that's low as well. So if we get some sunshine today, that's going to be struggling. Yeah? Now, is any water better than no water? Yes. If we get some sunshine later in the day and the heat gets up, I need the humidity. So rather than have that run out, I'll use what I call jug water. That's a Brita filter, using tap water as what goes in it, and what comes out is better than tap water. It's still got a reasonable TDS reading, even when it comes out of the jug. It's about 150, something like that. So it's still got an air of hardness about it, but it's had the worst of it taken out. You know, it's come down from 270, 280 to 150. And for a short period of time, having some slightly harder water into the hydrofogger is not going to do any harm out here. You know, using very hard water in the hydrofogger over a long period would end up getting a calcium film over everything, because obviously what goes in comes out the top, and that wouldn't be good. But for a short space of time, no problem. So as a matter of priorities, is any water better than no water? Now I'm going to have a look round a bit later when I've had my breakfast and stuff, and see if I've got a set of plants that's becoming desperate. Some of these cooler growers over here are in pure moss, things like this. These must not dry out, and that one is erring on dryness. Yeah? What's my ignea doing? Oh, that's still moist but not wet. Yeah? So I'm just looking at the ones that are in pure moss. If we don't get any heat today, they will wait till tomorrow. But I'm reluctant to get the RO unit out and have to go in and out all day long filling up my containers in the pouring rain. So we'll see how the day progresses. I think this rain's going to blow through. Although it did show rain erring on the south coast, in other words running up the channel heading east, and it might come inland a bit, and being right on the coast, that's what I would get. So I don't know how long this rain's going to last. It's been on and off since I got up this morning. So if I've got something desperate with the small amount of clean RO water I've got, what I'm doing now is getting my Vanders done. Yeah, that gets them out of the way for the day, and probably tomorrow as well, depending on the weather yet again. Yeah, okay with that. But that gives me some water. Now that's quite a high feed level in there, It's not that old, and the Vandas haven't been in there as often as they would normally have been. So it's still pretty fresh, fertilised water. Now I could use that and water it down with the bit of RO water I've got, if you see what I mean. So instead of starting with fresh RO water and putting my feed in according to what I'm about to do, I could use some of that and then water it down to get like twice as much, using less clean RO water. So it's all a matter of priorities, really. And the holy clay pots are fine, they can wait, although they shouldn't wait too much longer. But again, they won't have dried out as anywhere near as quick as they would normally do when we get sunny days. And if they spend a couple of days dry, it's not the end of the world. But if my cooler, constantly moist growers spend a couple of days bone dry, it could be the end of their world. If you see what I mean. So it's a matter of prioritisation. Now this lot in here don't get high feed, they get low levels of feed. So obviously if I use some of the Vanda water that's got a high level of feed in, I'd need a fair bit of RO water to water it down. Yeah? And a lot of these have got more sensitive roots than some of the other orchids, so using some of my filtered jug water would not be ideal. The TDS reading of the filtered jug water is higher than what I feed these at, so I wouldn't want to do that. But if it meant them staying bone dry for a day, that would be better than nothing, because it can get flushed out next time round when I've got an excess of water. So it's a matter of prioritisation. I will say that the old store-bought Phalaenopsis series is going well. Getting an excessive number of views on those videos, which is great. You know, I love it. The last one that I put up was getting them out of their pots, so you know, what's in my pot video. The actual repotting video is done. I'll post that tomorrow, and that really sets them up for a while then. You know, this initial sort of flush of videos about those orchids that were 2 and have now become 3. You know, that'll be it for a while then. We can sort of, the only one I will add on the end is, I'll film it, I won't post it straight away, is the initial watering of those orchids, because they're in, you know, they were put in dry bark, and how I propose to water and feed them from that point onwards. So we'll have a video about that. And then quite honestly, there isn't much to say about them for a while. So it's an initial flush of videos about them. And there should be enough there to get people going, you know, with enough sort of care information to be able to look after your store-bought Phalaenopsis and not kill the flipping thing. It's amazing actually, they are supposed to be the most tolerant of all the orchids and the easiest to grow in the home, and yet some of them still keel over. I mean, I know some really experienced growers that have been growing orchids like 50 years, you know, in the orchid societies, and that they can't keep the flipping things alive. You know, and yet they keep the most obscure, unpronounceable orchids alive and get good blooms and everything, you know. So it's a matter of getting them in the right place. I think that's all it is. You know, right media, right place, and some reasonable care without being excessive. You don't have to devote your life to them, you know, unlike something like a grow room like this, which does take a lot of work. And some of that work needs doing. Yeah, so just some thoughts on priorities, and sometimes that would have to be, like I've said, if today's your watering day, and you know, for some reason you haven't got the time you've normally got, then do the ones that most need it, and let the others wait. You see what I mean? Try and think about those that would suffer most if you left them, as opposed to those that will put up with it. Virtually everything in my holy clay pots is in that category. They'll put up with it. Yeah, I can leave them a day or two beyond their watering schedule and they'll be okay. My mounts will go a day or two beyond their watering schedule, providing it's not hot out here. So, you know, on dull days, I can go 2 days easily and 3 days at a push. And to not have to water the mounts for 3 days is a bit of a break. And sometimes you just need a break, you know. There's not many orchids die through lack of water. There are quite a lot that die from too much, or too often, I'll say, rather than too much. We have a kit issue. Some of you will remember, I don't know whether this will show on the video, but that fan packed up. I checked the wiring and it seemed okay. And bearing in mind the feed for these fans comes in and goes to that one first, then that one, and then the top one. And those two were working. So why wasn't that one? I assumed the fan had failed. So I bought a little set of 3 new ones. 3 for just under 10 quid with free postage. It's not bad going. You know, these run 24/7. They work hard. But if you, I don't know whether it'll pick up on the camera, they're not running smooth. And they're not running fast. See, they keep slowing up and then speeding up again. So they're not getting an even current. Now, the one that was supposedly broken at the top did actually turn out to be a break in a wire. And so although I've put the new one in, the old one does actually still work, so it can be a spare, you know. So if the current's not running true, we have to go back to the source, don't we? And if you look at that little black charger up there, hopefully it shows on the camera, it's got a little neon light that says it's working, and it keeps flashing on and off. So that little 12, you know, mains current down to direct current 12 volts is failing. That's what's wrong, and that's messing up the whole set of the little computer fans. So I've ordered a new one, replacement kit, and I thought back, that's been sat there, plugged in, running 24/7 for about 3 years. Now, they're not designed to do that. They're designed to charge things up. And when things have been charged up, they get turned off. So for that to have lasted that long, I am well impressed. And hopefully the new one will arrive tomorrow, and that'll just be a matter of connecting it up, and the little computer fans will be fine again. But yeah, kit can go wrong, kit can fail. I love this one. If you have a look at the hydrostat on the top, it's got a row of H's. That's an error. It says, I can't cope. It'll also have a row of L's. And what it basically means is the humidity it's reading is currently outside of the range it's set to operate in. So although it's an error, it's a good error. And then as the humidity drops down in here, it will kick back in again. It's not broken or anything, but it does look odd, row of H's. Yeah. Right, I'm going to go and get myself sorted out and then come back and do a few things in here. In fact, I don't think I will. I think this Sunday morning chat is just going to be this. There's not a lot going on out here. I haven't got new blooms. The sort of work I need to do out here, you've seen me water stuff many times. But I mean, for the time of year, a lot of people have said that they're really short on blooms, but I mean, you can't knock that Vanda up there. That is absolutely stunning. It's lasting well, probably the best spike it's ever had. Huge blooms, beautiful colour. Same again with the orange one. 2 lovely spikes, both out together. This one's just starting to go now. It's this first bloom starting to keel over. But it's done okay. My Psychopsis continues to bloom, despite being the worst looking plant in the world. It still keeps going. This little Phalaenopsis down here, the Sweet Memory, nice spike this time, starting to go. The lovely Oncidium is just continuing. Unfortunately, these open quite close together, so when it goes, it's going to go quite quickly. The Miltonia Sunset, doing well. Yeah, there's 3 nice spikes on there. That's a rescue plant. I will film it, but this was a little bit of an experiment because it had fusarium, and I took the 3 leads off. So there were 2 like leaved back bulbs and a new growth on each of the 3 plants, and I crammed them in the smallest pot possible to see what sort of root system I'd get. Well, I got one. And the idea was, because the media's fresh, I could pot it on. Now this is something I don't normally do. Well, that media hasn't been in there long, so it's far from breaking down. And because this is on a wet-dry cycle, it doesn't stay wet all the time, so it's going to last a long time. So that can just be gently lifted out and put in a bigger pot and give those roots some room for expansion. Because the next thing that's going to happen is these latest growths with the blooms on are going to produce another new growth. It'd be nice if they produced 2, but wishful thinking probably. But nonetheless, it now needs a bigger pot. But I don't want to repot it and disturb it. It's grown a brilliant root system, so let's keep it like that. So I'll film that sometime next week when I get a moment. This Miltonia saga, which we we have resolved, is looking good. It's a nice spike. The rest of the buds are still expanding, so nothing looks like it's going to blast. Don't know how long they're going to last. It's a first time bloomer, effectively, but very attractive. Yeah, I'm very pleased with that. So, you know, there's nothing going on down here. Nothing at all. No spikes, nothing. All the stuff down here you can safely say doesn't like the heat. So it's probably enjoying these last few days. Just seas of green everywhere up here. Got a few Dendrobium hercoclossum blooms. And I did see, when I watered that last time, I did see another little cluster of buds somewhere. Can I find them? Probably not. Such a big plant. Anyway, somewhere on there is another little cluster of buds. So once these few have gone, there will be some more. So, oh, there it is up there. Look. That's actually on one of the newer canes as well. Just 3 buds, but you know it will continue the blooms. It's well out of season. This is not its time, but it does do that sometimes. Other things, this spike over here still hasn't opened, but we're still waiting. We've got Cattleya sheaths pushing up all over the place, many there to come. And how on earth this thing is still in bloom, I really don't know. I am well impressed how long they've lasted, especially as the first time this one bloomed, it had a single bloom. And it really did look virus. It did have a lot of colour break and distortion on the bloom. And I thought, well, I'll give it a chance, because you do get that on some Cattleyas. Its first ever bloom is just not right. But the second bloom came out and the blooms are okay. So it gets to stay. This little spike's pushing its buds up. That looks like it's going to be a good one again. This is its second spike. The first spike went over a few weeks ago, so this is its second one. Yeah, so I've got no Tolumnias in bloom except for my species, the Europhylla. That's been in bloom absolutely ages. It's just opened another 3 blooms from this back branch back here, so they're fresh. These are about to fall off, which is a branch in itself. The other spike I took off, the blooms were fading and there was no sign of any branching. And this one, this is going to be its last branch that's allowed. After these 3 blooms go, I'll take the spike off. The plant could do with the rest and get its new growths going. Yeah, so there are many new growths on it. It's growing well, but it could do with a bit of a rest. It's been in bloom 3 months for a Tolumnia. It's pretty good going. And none of the other Tolumnias have got spikes at the moment. There's a vacant period for them. They're not doing blooming at the moment. This spike got badly hit by the aphids from the brassicas that came from Burnham's, and as a consequence the blooms are not as good as they should be this time round. They've got dead aphids over them, so they don't look as bright and cheerful as they might have done. And from now on, when this one blooms, I am going to stake it, because it is so unwieldy You know, it's well over 2 foot long, and it's a sturdy spike. So as you move the plant, the spike knocks things, and the blooms get hooked up on other things. So it's a little unwieldy. So that one will get staked next time. And this Phalaenopsis is an anomaly. I'll put a picture up of what the blooms looked like last time, back in the winter this was, and the time before, because the picture that I've got rings true for the previous 2 bloomings. And it's come out very different this time round, although as the blooms are aging, they're starting to get their tessellations, or starting to faintly show them. But if you compare these blooms with the picture I've got, taken a couple of bloomings ago, it's changed dramatically. It's a deeper colour, and the tessellations, which was part of its beauty, are virtually gone. So it's now gone from something a bit special to something a bit more ordinary. It's still attractive though, you know, still a good colour. As Dendrobium Phalaenopsis go, Phalaenopsis types, I like this one. And it's a large strappy plant as well. So that's good. And this little bulbophyllum is blooming its head off at the moment. It would be nice to know what it is, because it certainly isn't what it says on the tag. But, I mean, things go wrong with labels, it happens. This was one of the big box orchids, I think, if I remember rightly. Bulbophyllum tingabarinum, sorry. And it isn't. I've looked that up on the internet, and the blooms are nothing like this. I suppose possibly it could have been a named clone, but it seems too far away from that original species to be the same thing, if you see what I mean. Lovely deep colour and good shape to the blooms, typical bulbophyllum, you know. But yeah, not what it was meant to be, which is unusual. Oh, there we go, look. The hydrostat is now capable of reading the humidity in here. Those are just not very accurate. They're cheap and cheerful from China, slow boat from China, and they are not that accurate. But because I've got other ways of measuring the humidity in here apart from that, I can adjust the settings on that. So although it might say the humidity is coming on because I've set it to 75%, the true humidity in here could be different, and I've just made those settings to force the hydrofogger to come on when I want it, rather than when the reading says it needs it, if you see what I mean. So I've fiddled that one to get it to work properly, which is sometimes what you have to do with cheap stuff. Hibiki, in full bloom, looking good. I don't think there's any clusters that haven't opened now. They're all opened, those that I've got. I've got a lot of new growths on here. I'm going to have to watch these, because this plant's got a problem. But it only has a problem on new growths. These growths down here, the pendulous ones, are the ones that were on it when I got it. And the leaves are still okay. And yet, every time a new growth gets up to about this size, heads for maturity, shall we say, the terminal leaves get a really bad discoloration on them, lose their green, go pitted and spotty, and I end up taking them off. So it'll be interesting to see what these latest new ones do. But literally, this one's had 2 leaves taken off, this one's had 1 taken off, and this one over here, that was a winter growth a long time ago, had all its leaves taken off. And I left the cane on the grounds that doesn't mean to say it won't bloom. So I've left the cane there. But yeah, it's not growing as clean as it should. Reasons unknown as yet. Maybe one day. So yeah, I think I'll leave it for today, as I have got stuff to do. And I've got an awful lot of stuff to do that's nothing to do with orchids in here. So I might take advantage of a wet, miserable day and get some chores done around the house. See now, with my set of priorities, how high do you think those chores are? Yeah, they're down the bottom of the list. They even fall off the list sometimes. I live here on my own, you know, if the place is in a mess, so what? Nobody else sees it. It's only me. I've got to live in it. And I put up with a lot. As I say, my orchids, in the main, come first. Bonsai second, because if they stay dry any length of time, their roots will frazzle and they will die. So those have to be looked after. And then, really, keeping the garden tidy probably comes higher up than keeping the house tidy. Anyway, Kaniko's done a couple more blooms. This has been in bloom now for an incredibly long time. It has had a little break recently, but it's back on course again. Beautiful little blooms. Obviously, Victoria Regina is in there, clearly showing in coloration and shape. And we do have another cluster down here coming, so that one will follow on. And as I say, these old canes just keep on producing. You know, there's another one coming out here. So they just keep on going. It'll be good when the more recent growths get to the stage where they can bloom, which is this one, and this one. Those were last year's new growths, effectively, and they've still got their leaves. They probably have to become leafless. In other words, they become deciduous before they bud and bloom. And then that's this year's set of growths up there, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, there's 6 this time round, still growing. So this plant is expanding at a colossal rate. I just wish my actual Victoria Regina would do something similar, but it won't. I'll get it out, but talk about only just alive, but it is still alive. This one gets kept down in front of a computer fan to keep it cooler. It's got one tiny little new growth on it that is miserable. But it has grown a few roots. I mean, that's basically how it was when I got it. It wasn't in a good state. But not dead yet. That's a hell of a long way from ever being a decent plant. But we work at things like that. Just keep them going and see how they do. But that's been put in a shadier, cooler spot on the grounds that I don't want that stressed. And higher light, which is what it ought to have really, is a form of stress on an unhealthy plant. Yeah, and also heat for a cool grower is not good. Not when they're struggling. They'll put up with it when they're not, perhaps, but that's a struggling plant. So I'm trying to get it in a set of circumstances that it's more liable to survive in, which is cooler, good airflow, and no high light until it gets going a bit, if it ever does. Right then, so things to come. We got the store-bought Phalaenopsis repot. That'll get posted tomorrow, I expect. And I'll do a video of watering them, their initial water with the new Orchiata bark, and a chat about frequency and feeding and all that sort of stuff. And then that set of videos can go quiet for a while they just sit there. At the moment, they're going to stay on my dining room table. There's a fair bit of light comes in through the doors of the grow room, and they're not highlight orchids anyway. So they're going to stay in the house. They're not coming out here. They're going to be like homegrown orchids, and we'll see how we get on with them. But yeah, it seems a popular little series, and thank you to I can't remember the name, the person who actually suggested it, because I wouldn't have thought of doing something like that, I must admit. But it seems to be working well. So see you next time, and thanks for dropping by. Next weekend, my daughter's down. We're going to have a real good go at the garden, weather permitting. One good go at my garden at this time of year means it won't need anything done to it until next spring. So it's a massive session, 2 of us getting at it. So there might not be a lot of filming done next weekend. You know, obviously I've got a guest here, and we got work to do outside. So I'll get something posted, I'm sure, but it could be a quiet time next weekend. Yeah. Call it a break if you like, except for I'll be working harder than I would ever do in here outside in the garden. And yeah, Elvis seems fine. He's literally back to all of his old habits, so he's now predictable. So I would say he's recovered. I suspect he lost several of his 9 lives as a consequence. He's already lost a few when he went missing for nearly 10 days and came back half starved and dehydrated. He was in a very poor state, so he's had hard times. And I mean, both these cats are getting on a bit now. They're both well over 14, which, you know, for some cats is pushing it a bit. You know, I mean, some live an awful lot longer than that. I'm not wishing them away by any means, but I think Elvis has had a little bit of a knock. But he's bounced back again. You know, he seems to be trotting up and down the stairs, so he's got his energy back, and he lies around in the garden in the usual places, comes in and goes out at the usual times. So I think he's fine. And thanks for all your concern. Trying time that was. And I'll see you next time. Thanks for dropping by. Just one of these point and chat type videos today. Well, it is supposed to be a Sunday morning chat, isn't it? But we've had a look around and chat about some things, so see you next time. Oh, and I forgot to say, Rachel's channel, Gardening at Douentza, has a premiere video tonight on her orchids. She's got a varied channel, so it's not all orchids, it's gardening and visits to botanical gardens and foreign ornamental gardens and stuff. Very varied channel, but there's an orchid video tonight at 6 o'clock, and being a premiere, it means that if you watch it, she's watching as well, and as you put your comments in, you may well get effectively a live answer. So it's a sort of interactive thing, but not a live broadcast, but it's very close. So if you watch Rachel's channel, or even if you don't, go and find it and join in at 6 o'clock this evening. I'll be there if I don't fall asleep in the chair after all my work today. Bye for now.